have you ever come across an organization which is having 0% of shadow IT?
Oh no, never. So they believe they don't have shadow IT until they do a small exercise, which is not very comprehensive also, and it all comes out. And in fact, I read a research which said 90% of the vulnerability, 90% of the times, the patient zero from where the attack began was the asset about which you had the least information. Right? So you can't say, and shadow IT today is complex because it's no longer just infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Today it could be a shadow API that you never knew.
Exactly.
It could be a shadow, LLM that some developer installed to do something nice because of the speed at which people want to, produce more products and entice their customers. They left out a shadow, let's say a non-malignant, thing, but then it became a big issue later. So shadow, when you say shadow, it could be an element of IT, it could be an element of app and API, it could be anything, and nobody has conquered that. Right? Nobody has conquered that. I think maybe when you have something called a chief inventory officer, then somebody gets to do it properly. But you are bang on. That is a challenge that is still something that people still struggle with.
And which is the closest percentage? I mean, you deal with customers, CISOs, CIOs who are trying to discover their assets and reduce the shadow IT impact. So what is the closest thing that you have?
The closest basically actually changes. I'll tell you why. Sometimes some of them really doing a good job. With the advantage use of EASM products like external attack surface monitoring.
Right.
Every surface doesn't necessarily have to result in risk, right? Correct. So you should look at attack surface monitoring from a risk surface monitoring point of view.
Exactly.
See, we are business, so some part of our infrastructure will have to be exposed to. I cannot run a business without any exposure.
Correct.
But does the exposure necessarily result in risk? And if it results in risk, what is the actual value at risk? Quantify that, not in terms of dollar maybe, but in terms of what happens if there's a downtime for 3 days, what happens if there's a malware for 8 days, right? So look at the types of losses that can happen and then see whether or not every kind of exposure really results in risk, right? So it is very fluidic. If you look at some of our top customers who we are very proud of, that they're doing really great, control over their shadow IT, we see that it is a very changing number. Sometimes there might be a team that adds some workloads into the cloud, and it took them a little longer than usual to get it into their visibility. Sometimes there's a new couple of API nodes that they were unable to discover last time, but somebody else externally reported them. So it is always a catch-up game. Right. In order to be ahead of this problem, saying that regardless of what happens, whether or not I have a security control around it, but I have the ability to clearly see what's out there, it's going to be a challenging task. And of course, I cannot name customers, but some people are doing a really good job. And some of these people are doing a really good job. What I won't say upsets me, but what surprises me is these people are doing a good job there because the regulator is behind them. I want them to do this without the regulator chasing it, right?